the thing that I find interesting is as the Akashic Records and information about it is becoming more popular, there's a little bit of a misunderstanding about the way I work. So, for example, a lot of people associate the Akashic Records with past lives and or a path that we are sort of like bound to, and they want to, say, is this going to happen, or what were my past lives? And that is so not interesting to me. What I really do is I see people on a very deep soul level, and that just happens to be my gig, right? It doesn't matter if it were tarot, it doesn't matter if it were astrology. We all feel comfortable finding some kind of gig oftentimes, and that just happens to be mine. And also, as an intuitive, I don't need to go into somebody's records. I can often just do a scan and tell you what's going on in your system. And I think that's what my friend meant by you're already channeling information. So I was already seeing. This just gave me a way to sort of narrow it to a sort of a methodology. So when people come to me, I think what they're really looking for are themselves, and they may not realize it. And I just hold space for them to see themselves more clearly than they probably ever seen themselves before, because I do work at a very deep level, seeing patterns, seeing their soul gifts, seeing, who they are on a deeper level than sometimes they even recognize in themselves until they get that aha.
And so when you say, when someone comes to you, is that something that you do? Is that like you do all the work, or do they need to do something? Is it, yeah.
Great question. Yeah. So with the readings, and I see people come to readings maybe once a year, once every several years, or once in a while, whatever works for them. And it's question driven. So really, I was raised, with a family psychic. My family psychic married my husband and I, and she, did a lot of the traditional predicting kind of thing. I don't do that. A lot of times when you go to a psychic, they'll often say, oh, this is going to happen. Here's what I see. And, kind of that energy. What I don't want is for someone to, come to me and have specific questions that I'm not answering, right? If they're coming to me, there's a reason. And so I let those questions guide the session. So the questions can be very specific, what do I need to know around my health? Or, I'm having some particular issue in my relationship, or, what are my gifts? Or they can be very open-ended, like, what do I need to know? And sometimes people will start with that, what do I need to know? Or oftentimes they'll end with that, is there anything else I need to know? So as long as there's that question that I'm following, I can just, follow their lead. What I found, though, was that some people wanted to come to me more often than just once in a while. And when I first started doing these sessions, I was sort of told, oh, you don't want people to depend on you. You don't want them to be addicted to you. So you don't want to see them too often. But I had one client who was returning, and I thought, oh, gosh, I don't want to turn her away, but I could tell she needs help. And what I recognized was that she was moving through a process of really owning who she was. And it wasn't really a reading she was looking for, more it was a mentoring sort of situation. So from that point, about 2 years into my readings, I started doing mentoring with people. And that I do a little bit differently, because if they came to me every appointment with questions, basically they're giving me their power by saying, you have the answers and I don't. The other thing I find is if someone is stuck in their questions, they're often stuck in their head, and they're not necessarily going deeper to asking the real questions. So in mentoring sessions, I more or less just do a scan. I don't usually open their records. Sometimes I might be guided to, but I just do a scan of their system to see what their soul is telling me, what it is that is related to their spiritual human growth. And I touch on that, and then it becomes more of a conversation. And of course, I give supportive, practical things, but it's not a packaged, oh, I'm going to get them from here to there. In fact, I call it mentoring, because coaching, to me, for me personally, implies sort of like an end result. And I don't necessarily, it's not that I don't believe that there's an end result, but sometimes I feel people can get fixated on a particular something or another that they feel will make them happy. And really, it's not the case. And so the so-called end result that I see is really bringing them back to their truth, their power, and their joy.
And so that's really interesting for me, because we talk a lot about, being authentic, reaching into your inner wisdom to really, find what it is that you're meant to be doing here. There's all of these things of going back to ourselves. But how do we know when we found ourselves? How do we know when we've reached that place that, that this is what we're meant to do or meant to be? There's a lot of also questions, of course, about purpose and meaning and stuff like that. How does that all come together?
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a really great question. So if we feel this need to really tap into who we are, there's obviously a search there. There's a seeking, right, that happens that starts to kind of get that ball rolling. And, as infinite beings, are we ever going to discover all of ourselves? Are we ever going to really be that end result? And that's what I kind of think about this mentoring. It's like I'm walking along the path as you discover more of yourself and occasionally just hold this mirror to you, right? Whereas if we remain a seeker, then there's almost this need to fill a void that we are looking for externally. So that can also be sort of a little bit of a addiction we can get caught up in. And yet it's that lovely flow of seeking and knowing, being curious and not needing, right? So it's this movement that's very organic that I believe we can start to trust more and not judge ourselves for whatever it is we either discover or that we feel we need to go and follow and explore for a while. In terms of what is our soul purpose? What I see is our soul purpose is to really come into who we are here to be. And when I say that, it's to just release any of those fears or maybe shields that keep our hearts guarded, that keep us feeling trapped by any constraints that are outside ourselves, that we feel like, oh, I can't be myself because somebody will judge me, or I can't, express myself because that would go against the grain, or whatever that is. It's really just coming into our own comfort of being ourselves wherever we are in ways that aren't necessary. And when I say empowering, it's self-empowering, but it doesn't mean to be, overpowering over somebody else. It's to really just own who we are. And that way we can be in harmony and receive people as they are without needing to change either one.
That sounds like an incredible environment to be in, right? If you can accept yourself and accept, your fellow beings, it's like, wow. And so before we were speaking a little bit about, something that I'm very much interested in, which is the chronic pain, chronic illnesses, and all of that. What do you see when someone with pain come to you, and how do you help them to? I don't know. Is it helping them to heal, or is it helping them to understand the path that they meant to follow now? What does that look like?
Yes. And when you asked earlier about our, natural gifts, let's say, I don't consider myself a healer, but I do see a lot of people who have this natural healing, gift. So they may be the shamans, they may be the healers, the energy workers. Interestingly enough, I do energy work, but it's again based more on probably how I was raised and just holding space for people and not really trying to fix anything, right? And at the same time, I do believe that we are incredible healers. It's just like we are incredibly powerful. We are these incredible healers as well, or our natural state is a healed state. And yet we are human and we're going to have toxic environments. We're going to have traumas that are stuck in the body. And so what I see is I don't heal anybody. In fact, I often might refer people to other people who do healing, but I may help them see areas, because awareness is often the first step to healing, toward healing, right? By having the ahas, and to often show them where those stuck patterns or beliefs are that are, let's say, binding that illness, to them, or that pain, and ways that can support that releasing of it. But in terms of healing, it's really going to be that inside job. And of course they can get assistance from practical applications and people who know what they're doing. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it's something that I noticed. I often tell that when I just finished my studies, I was all in for the mind body connection, and I went, I put a post on Facebook, and immediately I got some people really angry, and I think that it was really because I was using the word mind body connection, and they were angry that I suggested that it was, the pain was just in their heads, which of course I didn't, and I wouldn't. But it made me understand that people get really attached a lot of the time to the illnesses if it's been there for a while, and then really that really guided me to when I work with people and I help, whatever I help them to do, I want to ask them, what is the gift that this situation has brought to you? What is something that you would never understand about yourself if it wasn't for this illness, pain, this thing that you don't want, but it's made you pause and look. So it's I guess this is what you're saying, because it's really, I'm not healing them. Of course, I can't heal anyone anyway, but I can help them understand the connection between how they've lived their life until now and what they want to think about moving forward.
Absolutely. And that's 100%. And it's hard because you don't necessarily what it feels like to the person who is suffering in any way is
Mm,
that when you hold this perspective or picture that they might be holding that belief or this pattern, um, then it feels to them like you're blaming the victim. And I'm so not about blaming victims at all.
no.
And yet, in this loving way, if we hold space for what, like you said, what is the gift in this? What is the connection to this that's keeping you safe? And one of the things, I did lose my husband to a terminal illness. So I absolutely believe in illness. And my mom, who was a lifelong metaphysician, or I would say from her teens on, she ended up getting taken by a terminal illness. And of course, I was then mad at her. I'm like, you should have known better, right? It was that human part of me that's like, wait a minute, mom, you weren't supposed to leave me right now. And you should have fixed this. But what's interesting is that there are parts of us that are still who I'll say this in a juicy way, who still get to be really human, right? I mean, that's why we're having this human experience, as we get to be human. And that
Mm,
includes obstacles in life. That includes, what we might call suffering and pain and dealing with a physical body. And it's not about transcending that, it's learning how to love ourselves anyway, through that, with that. And
mm.
sometimes a chronic illness or some kind of a pain will bring to the surface that which we most need to look at and learn from.
And that's to me that's how, I mean, yeah, I understand it and I'm curious about it. So I guess it's that, like that asking that thing about what is the gift. um I don't know, there's just, it feels to me that there is a question that I need to ask, and I don't know what the question is, but but to know what the answer is sounds to me like something that I want to open up, and I'm not sure how. um
Yeah. So I'll give an example. One time I had a client come and she had been dealing with a cancerous, piece in her, and she was, asking about it. And, again, it's not to say, oh, how did you create cancer? See, because I was raised with this metaphysical, thought, part of what I sort of took on is the guilt of having created my reality and messing everything up, right? And so as a child, I had to visualize myself getting well. And when I speak about this, I jokingly, when I give talks and stuff, jokingly say, can I just have chicken soup like the other kids? Because that ease of just being comforted and being given chicken soup and being loved is so much more tender in so many ways than, okay, now close your eyes, find the illness in you, and it's like, I just want to be sick. I want to be a kid, right? And
mm,
so that, I think that having this upbringing didn't really make me sort of um, fall in line to this belief, this narrow belief, but rather open up my compassion to recognizing sometimes we just need to have whatever we have. And so anyway, this client came to me, was asking about her cancer, and so I wasn't looking at it like, how did she cause it? I was just looking at her patterning, and I said, oh, I'm seeing that your mom was, really critical, and And then she was like, "Oh no, she's my number one supporter." And then it just kept coming in stronger. And I said, "Well, what I'm seeing is that it's like as a child, it's like, you didn't quite feel supported by her, and that, there was almost like you, in some ways, you were kind of an inconvenience because she was so overwhelmed." And all of a sudden my client just started to cry, and she said, "Yes." And she said, and it was like, especially when I got sick, it was like, I can't deal with this. And so it was almost like that trauma, that memory, that belief that she wasn't worthy, that she was an inconvenience, got lodged in there, right? And it's not a judgment. It's just like, oh, this makes sense. There might be some genetic issue. And yet, with this childhood wound, became this locked up energy that since then her, mother has evolved and become compassionate and supporting her. But at the child level, she was still in that pain body of the
Yeah.
experience.
This is so incredible because really a lot of the time that's exactly what I'm talking with my clients. We have to find the trauma. I have one client joined me recently. She said, "Oh, I've started suffering with my pain 3 years ago," and and she's talking to me about all the medical situation and the doctors and stuff, and I'm like, What happened? What happened 3 years ago?" And then then she finally made this connection about this huge thing that happened in her life, and then it all falls into place. And was recent, right? This was just 3 years ago, but a lot of the time this trauma really start when the people are young, and they don't even know that this is trauma. So it's they say, "Oh yeah, this happened to me. I wasn't very happy about it," but they don't make the connection of trauma. And when you say yes, but and then you give the you become compassionate, and show them that actually it was a big thing, then things start to fall into place. So it's so incredible to be present in that situation.
Absolutely. And I think, that compassion is key, right? It's that compassion, and really holding space for where someone is in that moment, not having them feel shame. And that's not to say that we can prevent anybody, but that's not the intention of holding space for someone. It's to say yes to exactly who they are in that moment, including whatever is going on with them. And I think, when you mentioned, this place of the defensiveness, it's sort of like, what is that illness? What is that piece protecting them from? Right?
Yeah,
It's like oftentimes their illness can become almost like a shield that protects them from really tapping into their power.
yeah,
Because if they have this shield, then it kind of, let's say, invokes, either pity or compassion from others, or attention in some way which they may have not gotten as children, or whatever. Or even if they're the silent sufferer, it can sometimes be this sort of inner martyrdom in which they learn the patterning, oftentimes from the mother, of, oh, my needs, don't matter, and they put themselves on the back burner. And so it starts to implode and cause, this inner pain. But what most of our issues, whether it's pain or whether it's, some other, relational issue, whatever it might be, and I say the word issues very lightly, oftentimes they are not just opportunities, but they can also become places in which we get to play small, get to, not be aligned with our power, because it gives us a little bit of a safety mechanism, a little bit of a place of, rest.
yeah,
Because if we're always having to be bigger than we are, just feel that for a minute. If we always have to be bigger than we are in this world, it can feel exhausting. It can feel too much. It can feel that we're here all by ourselves trying to fix the woes of the world or be something that we're not. And so it's almost easier to kind of step back and go, okay, just let me be comforted in my blanket of illness, right? And so again, no
yeah,
judgment, but if we feel that energy of what would it feel like to start to remove those layers of, misbelief or trauma or whatever, and it can feel very vulnerable in a world that isn't very compassionate.
yeah. I see that all the time with my clients, and I totally get that. It's so good to have this, come up, because if people are listening and if they're suffering with anything, it's really that question of, you know, who one question I guess is, who will I be without this, or what will I be required to do without this, and you start recognizing what you are really protecting, or what is, in your identity level now. So there's so many
Exactly.
fascinating questions to ask in all of this.
Yep.
We're coming towards the end of our conversation, but I was wondering if you have any message you want to leave our listeners with.
Yes. My work is really focused on, really owning again your, soul truth, your inherent power, so that you can align more easily with your essential joy. And one of the things that I really feel is that we are moving through this process of releasing old patterns that are no longer serving us. And in so doing, it's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be fun for the most part. It's not going to be easy. And
Mm.
yet we are all here to support each other in, birthing our new selves, in, not to say new as in, oh, there's something new and polished about me and I have to be perfect. No, that authentic self, that part of ourselves that hasn't really been safe to be out in the world. And what I believe is that as we do this, we're co-creating a safer, more compatible, compassionate world so that people can show up as who they are and
Mm.
feel more aligned with the natural gifts they've come, in with, and then be able to give them more freely. So it's sort of this movement of working together as we do our own inner work. And it's not, again, always going to be super simple, and we wish it could be, but that doesn't mean that we're not, you know, I would say obliged in some way, because our souls wouldn't call us to this work if we weren't in some way obliged to doing so, to creating this more holistic approach to being who we are.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's really, I really do believe in that. We go through circles until we come to the place that, yes, now we have to deal with it, and yeah, we can't ignore it. Veronica, this
We
has been
could, but it,
fascinating.
it wouldn't, that just, it's actually, also, I will say that we could keep ignoring it, but that's actually more painful than moving
Yeah,
through it. Yes.
and that's I totally agree. Yes, yes, because yes, you're right. It's that fighting within us, and when we keep in the fighting, it's the pain, and when we go through it, at least we know that, we are moving forward, and I think that's what a lot of people, when they start doing the work, that's what keeps them going, because they notice that even though it's hard, they are on the right path.
Exactly.
Yes. Great. Well, really, thank you so much, Veronica. I really, really enjoyed that conversation. And thank you. I'm sure people listening enjoy it too. And I'll put your details with the recording as well, so people can reach out if they so wish. Thank you again so much for being here with me
Absolutely.
today.
It was beautiful to spend time with you, and thank you so much.
Thank you.